Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN senior NBA insider, joining us on the program. Woj, good morning. How are you?
Dan, good morning. I'm great.
All right, where do we stand here? The NBA's been pretty quiet. Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
I think it's been a good sign. I mean, if you want the league back and that's the goal here, I think they're moving toward that, Dan. And they've been putting all the contingencies in place, and really what they're waiting for is Adam Silver to just kind of hit the green light here, probably sometime in June. But they've been moving toward it, and they've got you know, Silver's done a pretty remarkable job of keeping a lot of the details very tight, even away from his owners, front office, the union,
Hmm.
in terms of exactly how many teams would come back. I think the site is starting to narrow down to a one or two site scenario, but there's certainly momentum toward the league coming back.
Now, when you're talking about site or sites, are we talking about Vegas, Orlando? Are those the two sites that are in conversations?
That's right, Dan. And Orlando has had a lot of traction, and I think the question is going to be, um, are they going to put all the teams in one place? Or are they going to perhaps have teams moving um, among two sites based on an Eastern Western Conference scenario? But the one thing Adam Silver has told the players and told the owners, what he doesn't want are teams flying around. You're not going to see what baseball's proposing, which
Hmm.
is teams moving around playing in home stadiums. The NBA is focused on a one site, no fans, and then they're going to deal with trying to get back into arenas again, buildings again for the start of next season.
So, just to recap, you're looking at least maybe one permanent site here for the postseason, or possibly two permanent sites with Vegas and Orlando, where you have East Coast and West Coast teams. And
That's possible. That's one way they could do it, Dan. They may put everybody in one site. The thing that we don't know yet, and I think they're still working through, is are they bringing back all 30 teams? Are they bringing back just the playoff teams, or something maybe in between it, where you would have, let's say, the seven. There was a talk last. There was a vote that was actually coming to do for next year, which was the play-in tournament at the end of the season.
Mhm.
I mean, like a year ago, that's all we were talking about. That was the big issue in the league: play-in tournament, mid-season tournament. But they could, in bringing these teams back, do a play-in tournament that might take you through the 10th seed, or maybe even the 12th seed. And then it's how many teams are you bringing back? Do you leave out maybe the bottom few teams in each conference? But I don't have. I think they've discussed all of that, Dan. But they still may very well bring back all 30. There may be teams who don't want to be left out in that way. And this is where it gets tough for Adam Silver when you have to start making decisions. I think his handling of the matter has been very popular within the league and probably even outside the league. But it gets more difficult when you start to have decisions made that have consequences, impact people, and then people are less happy with you.
Has everybody been paid? All of the players, their entire salaries?
Well, starting on May 15th, so I don't even know what the date is anymore. I think
I think it's the 18th.
the 18th. Starting on May 15th, they started to withhold 25% of the players' remaining salaries, so that if games are canceled, then I think we can assume there'll at least be some regular season games canceled. They're not going to come back and be able to play them all. Then the owners take back a percentage of that money. It's basically 1% of player salaries based on how many games they miss. And so now they've had withholding taken from their salary, so they don't have to take it all out at once at the end of the season.
It's the 19th, Woj. I was wrong.
There you
I'm
go.
right there with you. Like, I at least know the month. I don't know the day. We're talking to Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN senior NBA insider. Are the power brokers involved in this? Chris Paul, LeBron James, some of the other notable players with the commissioner?
Chris Paul is the president of the Players Association, so he's very much in that conversation. Dan, him, Michelle Roberts, Adam Silver, they talk frequently. The one advantage that Silver has in this scenario maybe even over baseball right now. I think there's a stronger relationship between the star players and the commissioner. Maybe not necessarily the owners, but the commissioner, and that helps in selling what has to be sold here, which is the one site concept. And he's gotten feedback from the players about how they feel about that bubble idea, what they might like and not like about it, because he really needs the cooperation of the Players Association, and by extension, really the star players, because they do drive maybe more than any other sport. I think they drive the conversation among the 450 players in the league, and if you can sell your star players and what it is that you want to accomplish, how you need to do it, they can go out and start selling it with their peers too. And Adam Silver's understood that, and he has made his star players a big part of the conversation, because there's a lot of real difficult economic conversations coming between the union and the players, or the union and the league, and they're going to have to alter how the salary cap looks for next year, and luxury tax, and a lot of boring, dry financial topics that are going to absolutely have a big impact on competitive balance in the league. What the league's really worried about, Dan, is not so much what happens this summer, but what happens next year if they can't have fans in arenas, or if they have to have like a social distancing uh, situation with fans, where in a 20,000 seat arena maybe you can only have 4,000 or 5,000 people, and how do you manage that? Because the revenue stream of the league, 40% of it depends upon uh, basically game night receipts.
I know this sounds crazy, but if we start to inch closer to deeper into the summer, is there any chance the commissioner would say, I'm going to take the two top teams in the East and the two top teams in the West, therefore I can cut down the travel and the number of people involved in this, and I can reduce the odds of somebody testing positive? You basically have a Final Four for the NBA. Could you ever see us? Because they're bound and determined to crown a champion here, Woj.
They are determined to crown a champion, Dan, but I think they want to crown a legitimate champion, and
Okay.
I don't think they would see that as legitimacy. There won't be a playoff team left behind. Now,
Okay.
after the playoff teams, that may still be up for debate. But one thing Adam Silver did say in a call with the players, that his goal was to have 7-game series in each playoff round, and that they wouldn't cut it down to a best of 5 in any round, and try to make the champion as legitimate as it can be.
Yeah, I had heard that they were looking at a 5-game series for the first round, and then they would eventually get to 7 games. But you're refuting that with your information,
Well,
so I certainly trust that.
But then when you say they were talking about it, I do think they were talking
Okay.
about it. I think they knew all of it was based on how many days do we have to play with here? How many days do we have? But the goal is to do it in 7-game series. But that doesn't mean they've discussed everything.
Yeah.
And I do think that was one of the conversations. What would that look like? I know their preference is to try to keep those playoffs best of 7 all the way through.
I'll leave you.
Because hey, here's what you don't want in the first round. I mean, if you don't want a 1-8 upset. Like, this isn't the last thing you want is a 5-game series where the 8th seed has a better chance. I mean, come on, we know you don't really want that.
No. I'll leave you with this. Are we pushing back the 2021 season, no matter what happens the rest of this summer?
I think it's increasingly likely, Dan, and I think pushing it back gives the league next year more time to have more dates where they could have fans in the arena. Because if you start in mid-October, which you can't do anyway if this season pushes into late September or into September, it just buys the league more time to kind of kick the can down the road, to have fans in buildings, because that's what they're really worried about.
If you were covering Jordan now in that last year with the questions that have emerged from that, like, how would you approach that as an NBA insider of, the flu game or the food poisoning game, Jerry Krause, Phil Jackson, can you bring him back? Like, could you let us into your world of how you think you would have approached that in today's world?
I think the one difference, Dan, might have been, and there was a mortal NBA writers, media then, who are covering it day to day. I think there's more attention now on the salary cap and the financial impact of the decision Scottie Pippen might have had on a 1-year, $14 million deal versus doing the sign and trade. I think there would have been more attention paid to the economics and the cap and how difficult it would have been to bring the whole group back. I think that's probably a small difference in it.
Not the other stuff with Jordan?
I think it was all covered. I just think it was covered in newspapers. It was covered on Sports Center. I don't get the sense it wasn't all covered. I just think that the platforms were different and it didn't inundate us like it might with social media now.
But how would social media have affected Michael Jordan?
Ooh, good question. It's affected every great player that I've ever covered or been around. And because if you're looking for slights, like, hey, listen, social media is not the place to go for self-affirmation. Like, if you're looking to feel better about yourself, it's generally not the place you'd go, probably even for Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Hey, Woj, great stuff, and thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Anytime, Dan.
That's Adrian Wojnarowski, the Woj podcast there, where he discusses the hottest topics around the league, only on the Woj podcast.